It's Lowry.
All right.
That's yes.
Sorry, I didn't
Um,
recognize your voice, Laurie.
that's okay.
It's a compliment.
So yeah, so this is going on the Drupal Twig YouTube. So it's documented there in case anyone wants to watch it later. And so we have a short agenda for this meeting today, but I hope we can get some discussion happening around this create a new user-facing core team idea. So first on the agenda was that it would be a good idea to summarize the idea and goals, including the original incentives of the key people. So how familiar in general are you about this idea? So is this useful, or should we still go through the idea one more time?
So we've talked about it in the past, so I feel like I'm generally up to speed. Having said that, it's been a while since we talked about it. And so
Yes.
It wouldn't hurt to just go through it very quickly and set sort of everybody, or maybe just me, get everybody sort of aligned on these goals.
Yeah. So let's go through it very quickly then, because it seems like there has been already a little bit of discussion happening around this. So in DrupalCon New Orleans, we had this idea of, or I guess I had this idea of creating a new user-facing core team to Drupal, just basically to update the brand that Drupal has for the people that are evaluating Drupal as either as an end user or as a client or as a developer. Because right now, Drupal doesn't really give a good first impression with its design. It doesn't look like a system that allows whoever is building something using Drupal them to build beautiful websites. And there's not that many good examples publicly available online of beautiful generic examples or like well available good examples, like especially for Drupal 8. Like there is not that many good contributed teams, and there's not that many like premium teams that could really demonstrate that well. So I think we should have a good demo in Drupal core that demonstrates how great Drupal is and how it allows its developers to build beautiful websites. And for that reason, we are proposing to create this new design. And when we've created this new design, that we would develop a team, which would be more modern and contemporary, and add it to core. So in the very beginning, the idea was very simple: just create a new default team. That's all. But after we've had some discussions in Dublin, we realized that it would be very important that we would have default content bundled with this idea, because if that would make creating the design way easier than it is without the default content. It allows us to get way better results because of the fact that it's very difficult to design kind of a empty canvas. If there's nothing to show for the users, it's very difficult to create a nice, elegant design for that. So for that reason, we decided that we will kind of join the forces of the default content initiative. And not necessarily that one or another would be blocking the other, like that the default content couldn't be added to the core before the team is there, or the team couldn't be added there before the default content. They are not hard blocking each other, but it's more that to reach that ultimate goal, which is that we have a good demo, we will need to have both in the end at some point. So for that reason, we decided, because they are not hard blocking ideas, that we will work on these ideas separately. So this idea is very limited to the team itself. And then there's the other idea, which is more about the default content. Now I'm reading off if there's something else that I missed about the idea. So about the idea, also during DrupalCon Dublin, we decided to propose for the community that this new theme/default content combo would not be built as a Drupal. So we are not kind of like showcasing Drupal with the content and with the design by using Drupal's brand itself. So it's not a like technical demo which says this is Drupal. It's more about like we will create a real use case and showcase like how powerful Drupal is by just building a beautiful website for that specific use case. There's also some other ideas that are right now pretty crucial for this idea to be successful, such as not making the theme a framework because of the fact that there is not many people committed to do both the design and the framework. So, and it will take us way more time to try to figure out both of these things right at once. So for that reason, people would like to focus first on the design part, and then later on, maybe after we've created the design, building the framework into that design or being part of that team.
When you I have a question about that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So when you say a framework, what do you mean? Like, do you mean, creating the theme in such a way that it becomes reusable, for example, or that people can extend it? Is that what you mean, or something else?
So technically, it will be something that people can extend, but it will be more like the themes that people will build as part of their projects when they build themes for clients. Because like let's talk about a little bit of like what Bartik does. So Bartik has a lot of like little features that are kind of undocumented, and it's just like, let's say if you move the menu from different regions, and we have different kind of styling provided by Bartik, which allows you to move the menu nicely to other regions. So that kind of features kind of make it feel like more like a framework to build your site, because of like you can just drag your blocks into different regions, and the team would just accommodate your need based on that. So for us, we are proposing that we are not creating that kind of features, but instead we will just place the menu in the header or in the footer wherever the design tells us to place it. But if someone moves it to other region, it doesn't necessarily work that well. So that we wouldn't have a specific styling if someone drags the main menu to the sidebar. Another part of this is also kind of like the technical side. So we are not, because at the very beginning of this idea, when this idea was posted, a lot of people started telling that they need like design framework / teaming framework in Drupal core, which is more like what some teams like Bootstrap are. So that would kind of like create a teaming framework / design framework, and people wanted to have something like that in core. And now it's clearly stated that that's also not something that is planned to be done as part of this idea.
Yeah.
Got it.
Does it answer to your question?
It does, yeah, great. That's very clear. And I have another question. Sorry if that's interrupting your flow.
No, it's good.
And so this would or would not be proposed as the default theme, or it would just be a theme that's available for people to enable, with default content.
That's a very good question. So that's kind of like that. We are on another idea. We are proposing to add a new installation profile to Drupal core, and we think the standard as the default theme of standard, the theme that standard is as a theme as the default theme of Drupal. But after we create a new installation profile, it kind of changes it a little bit because we have another installation profile that people use for different use cases, and then we would have another theme as a default theme of that installation profile. Then it's difficult to tell which theme is the default theme of Drupal anymore because we have two installation profiles that install different themes. So this would we are not proposing to add this as the default theme of standard, but we are proposing this to be added as a default theme of another installation profile, which has already been approved on another idea.
The experimental install profile, yeah.
Yes. And just to add to that, the theme and the default content would be clearly labeled as experimental and also labeled as essentially demo or example. So, you know, and it would be clear to people that they would not be the standard profile.
Yes. So,
but this is where the two initiatives start colliding a little bit, because I think there were unresolved questions at the example content initiative about A, whether the content was the right thing to have, B, whether even if it starts as an experimental profile, whether we want to keep it as an experimental profile, and then C, whether we want the ability for people to build off of that example content and continue building their sites, or whether we want them to have to destroy their site and rebuild it when they're done kind of seeing how Drupal works. And so that is where this issue previously got sort of messy.
Yes, I think we're caught up now, and that's exactly where we need to find the path for. Assuming this, we like this idea, we need to get clear on the path for it.
It's something
without breaking users.
So let me just to make sure we're all on the same page. Let me repeat back to you what I heard. Is that okay?
Yes.
I think it's probably useful. So the goal of this new theme is to showcase what Drupal can do and to basically give people a great first impression. To do so, you guys are proposing this new theme. Also, to make this really effective, it would benefit from default content. And so all of that, the theme and the default content, will be bundled in a new install profile. And the goal is really more for, let's say, if somebody downloads Drupal, they want to see what Drupal can do / look like, they can check it out. Or maybe in a Drupal company, a Drupal shop, maybe they can use it to demo Drupal, to help them sell a Drupal project. That is the goal, is what I heard. What is not the goal, I think it's probably good to sort of say that as well, or what is not the primary goal is to build a framework, something that can be used as a starting point to build a site, maybe to be reconfigured. It's also not necessarily built as a theme that developers would use to start from. It's really very focused on providing that first impression and a good showcase of Drupal.
Core.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Is that correct, or did I miss something?
Yeah, that's well summarized.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. And so how can I help you guys? To me, that sounds like a good idea, by the way.
Yeah.
I have no problems with that idea.
Yeah, so there's few open questions.
Mm-hmm.
It was proposed by, I guess as kind of like the sound of the overall opinion of the product management slash top management of Drupal, that we might also want to consider to build this into kind of like a training purpose to teach people how to use Drupal. So that the current idea is the demo, but it sounds like we would benefit even from having a demo.
Yeah,
So,
I think one of the unresolved questions from the last time we reviewed this was, if we're building a demo, then the question was, should we pick a use case that's more in line with what people would actually do with Drupal and then knock it out of the park? Or if we're building tutorial content, should we focus in on that and then make the demo a starting point for people building their sites? I think that was the unresolved question from the last time.
Yeah, I mean, so that there's a balance, I guess. Or maybe this is the question, like whether you make a demo that is somewhat usable, right? Let's say a lot of people that use Drupal use it to build a corporate website, and it has things like an about page with maybe profile photos of the employees. It has, you know, a bunch of stuff. And that could sort of optimize the usefulness in a way. But the drawback or the flip side of that could be that it maybe doesn't truly showcase you know, all of the things you can do with Drupal. And so one could argue that we want this profile to be more of an edge case that is better suited to showcase unique things in Drupal. Is that sort of the situation, or not quite?
Kevin, I guess you can. Yeah.
I think this starts to touch on the example content part of the picture, and I think that just to recap where we were with that, I think you, Dries, you know, had misgivings in the meeting where the prioritization is being done around these ideas about the farmers market example. And was the farmers market example something that was indicative of something that our customers could use, and B, was it something that could be reused? So I think we've kind of resolved the second question, which is that do we want something that can be reused? Because if it's a demo, you know, it's not going to be very good for reuse, and if it's very good for reuse, it's not going to be a very good demo, as Gabor has put very nicely earlier. But the first question about whether the example that we came up with, which we chose, which we landed on because it was something that was already in existence and we could take it and run with it, being the farmers market example, is something that's indicative of what our customers are doing. It's clearly not, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, in my view. And I've written about this in the document that I shared about lean hypothesis for an outside-in experience, or not outside-in, out-of-the-box experience, in that the use case needs to be something that's within the understanding of the kind of customers that we're targeting, or that use Drupal, but it needs to be probably a good deal simpler than some of the things that they might be doing, and also it's something that everybody can relate to, because if it's just about higher ed, then it's not going to be relatable to somebody who's in pharma, and vice versa. I suggest that the content model does not need to necessarily map to a large group of people who currently use Drupal.
Right.
So,
yeah, it shouldn't necessarily try to capture the largest common denominator of what people do with Drupal, right?
no,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I can see different sides of this. I think it comes down to maybe trying to be a little bit more specific on who this showcase is for. And let me try and explain this a little bit. The way a lot of Drupal companies go and sell Drupal projects is they actually try and show what Drupal can do, right? Like they have a potential customer, they want to do something, and so let's say you're Wunderkraut. What they want for them to be most successful, they need to show a demo, a showcase that makes their customers see like, oh, this could work for me, and it looks awesome. So therefore, Drupal looks like a great choice. The most effective demos, and we see this at Acquia too, by the way, is where we can customize the content to the customer. So if you pitch a potential customer in media and entertainment, like you want to show them something in media and entertainment, so they feel like, oh, wow, these people understand my business, or they, like it helps the potential customer relate and sort of see the value of Drupal. And if you want to showcase something to somebody in insurance, maybe you would have some other default content in there. And so if the goal for this theme install profile is for, let's say, to enable Drupal shops to pitch Drupal to potential customers, I think it is useful to pick a use case that they can use without having to do a ton of customization. If the goal is, however, for sort of self-starters to download Drupal, install Drupal, and just kind of click around, if you will, to evaluate,
understand content models, and
yeah, exactly, to learn a little bit more about Drupal, like, oh, look, you can create entity references and like these kinds of things. And I think a farmer's market idea is totally fine. So I think what I'm trying to say is, even when you say the goal is to showcase Drupal, there's maybe at least two variants in how you can do that. Is it somebody going to showcase Drupal to a potential customer, or is it somebody that's maybe a little bit more advanced and has already selected Drupal or expressed a serious interest in Drupal and has decided to go install it and try it out, right? And somebody that's maybe a little bit more technically savvy that can say, oh, okay, I can see how I can turn a farmer's market example into something that is useful to me, and how some of these concepts in the farmer's market example, like content types and entity references and views, how I can reuse those for my project. And I think both are useful. I think I'm not sure which of the two is more useful, but I think you have to pick one or the other, probably, because I think you build let's say the Drupal shop demo installation profile. I think you built that differently, and I think.
Can you build that one? Can you build that one with core only?
It's hard to imagine that like a big pharma would be satisfied with the core only features.
Yeah, I think that's a fair
point. I've been in the Wunderkraut sales presentation, and that's about filling in a postcode and the Google Map shows up, right? Or
right.
It's about slick features like that.
But you could argue that you can build that with just core. I think, it would be a limited demo for sure.
Yeah. And so, like on the sales situation, it's all about like getting the risk, the feel of risk on the customer side lower. And for that reason, we should definitely, like, if we want to focus on that goal, we should try to think how we could best do that using Drupal core. For me personally, I feel like the farmers market could be potentially good model for that, because it creates this effect of like Drupal being powerful and flexible, even though it doesn't relate to all of the showcases that my client would potentially have. And this is more for the smaller shops than the larger shops, because like on the larger clients, when you need to be able to lower that feeling of risk way more than the small shops has to, then they have to build their own demo. But I want to just say that I discussed about this on a flight on the way to Dublin with a CEO of a company that is around like 100 people, and he was like if this kind of idea would like pop up to Drupal core, like he would be easily funding something like that, because they spend so much money on like just these very, very simple demos, even like for the smaller clients. Like, of course, they would have to still build demos for the like more bigger projects, but the smaller projects that are like size of like less than 50,000 euros or something like that, they could use just a very generic demo as long as it looks good.
Right.
So I think,
but it is going to be more effective if they can quickly customize it. I mean,
Yes.
I've seen companies walk into these demos and they've already put the logo of the company they're pitching, in it, let's say, and they've like spent a couple hours or half a day or a day tweaking the demo to the customers. The customer is just completely impressed if you do it that way, versus it's like a demo that's maybe not directly related to their business. So I think there's probably merit in both approaches, and I think we have to pick one.
Right.
And I'm not arguing for one or the other, by the way. I'm just trying to provide some insights, I guess.
So the thing you said before, Dries, about the people who are, quote, just clicking around or just looking around, I think it's really, really important that we think about those people, and that we think about that as the wide end of the Drupal funnel, okay? So we, in my view, should not be focusing on making the job of making demos easier for Drupal companies who already know how to use Drupal and who already know how to make proofs of concept and demo sites. They do this all the time. I was talking to the Amazing people the other day. They have, they have a standard framework that they use to create, proofs of concept and demos for companies. And I'm sure many Drupal companies out there do already have their own demos, or they use Demo Framework, or they use some other product, or they use some other distribution to create demos, and they make proofs of concept that, as Lauri said, are very specific to the audiences that they're making them for. But these people who they're pitching to got there somehow, and the way that they got there, I think many of them, is that somebody told them about Drupal, and they probably went out and took a look at it somewhere. And there are many different places.
Internal evangelists.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's many internal evangelists. Sometimes the internal evangelist just wants to be able to show Drupal to their boss. And
right.
The one that they download and install needs to look good for that purpose.
Sure.
Or the one that somebody spins up on Simply Test Me, just hitting it off the web, or hitting it off Drupal.org or off Drupal.com, or the one that somebody spins up on their web host who has a one-click install of Drupal. All of these, we have no control over. Customers have no, Drupal companies have no control over that base install and making that look good. So let's
say then that this is for sort of the downloader, if you will, somebody that wants to explore Drupal.
I like the self-starter, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't do it through a sales pitch, but just downloads Drupal. He's then recommended, if you don't know Drupal and you want to learn what Drupal is about or what Drupal can do, go install this profile, right? And it comes with default content, this new theme, and in that scenario, I do think this is very useful, and I do think it starts to blend with sort of helping people learn about Drupal. You know, I could see something like the tour module being there, where you can take a tour through the site and you can learn about some concepts in Drupal, like content types and views and that kind of stuff. Like where it's a demo, it's a slick first impression, and then it's the start of a learning journey.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm glad we arrived to this picture of the thing, because I think this is the clearest expression of what the team has always kind of envisioned in that sense.
Yeah. So what does that mean in terms of the goal? So we were discussing demo versus training. So is the goal to be kind of both in that sense then? Or
I think so, because like if it's a showcase of Drupal, in my mind at least, and feel free to disagree, in my mind it's then people download Drupal, install Drupal, and their first impression is like, wow, this looks really beautiful. And then I think very quickly they'll want to figure out, can they, you know, can I use this for my, how does this work? Can I use this for my project? And so I think you would want to maybe use something like the tour module and say, hey, you can, you know, here's basic concepts in Drupal. Like, look, you can configure the menu. Well, not that they have to configure it, but there's menus and there's content types, and there is something like an entity reference, maybe that's too technical, but, and it allows you to make links or relationship between ingredients and recipes that you can buy at the farmer's market, right? And so you can use this thing to help them understand concepts. And then once they've learned some of these concepts, I think they're going to be much more successful if they then reinstall Drupal to start building their site.
right.
That to me sounds like something useful.
Yeah, it sounds when it's being put that way that it makes a lot of sense. That when two of these things are bundled together. So that would mean like using tour module, but I guess the next kind of thing that needs to be figured out is like how well do we then support this like configuration, because this is one of the things that was as originally being proposed to be left out, that it's not that much there's not that many configuration options available. Like it's not a framework theme that you can do everything using this theme. So would this kind of training still be useful, even though the things that the user can do are limited by the fact that we are not supporting all the different use cases? Obviously, it depends on what kind of demos are we create, like what kind of training materials are we providing, like what are we guiding the user to do?
Mm-hmm.
But are the options too limited if we don't allow the user to like drag all the blocks to everywhere they want and things like that? Because of so the reason why we don't want to be a framework team is because so the problem is that if we want to be up to date with these beautiful designs, it is way too much work for this group of people to stay up to date with the designs if we want to build a framework every time we rebuild a new team using.
I don't think we need a framework, Larry, in order to have it be a site that people can mess around with and change, and that we do some tours. And I don't think that the tours. The thing about the the original way that the farmers market training stuff is organized is it's training for Drupal developers. I think what Dries is suggesting is much more more site builder level, more assembler kind of level stuff, where it's like, this is what an entity reference is, and this is what a block is, and this is how you would place a block, and this is how you would create a new piece of content, or this is how you would enable comments or things like that. And these and tours are all just YAML files, so it's not like really a big job to add these things in. But it's not about making it, just with the configuration options that people can do in Drupal out of the box, there's a lot of stuff that you would need to tour people around, I think.
Yep. So just
I agree. Like, I don't think we need to make it a framework theme. So I totally agree with you, Laurie.
Yeah.
And I don't think the goal is to let people make changes to this thing, right? I don't think we should encourage them to try to reconfigure things.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the instruction should be pretty clear. Like, don't use this as a starting point for your theme or your site, I should say.
Yeah. Interesting enough, we've decided that Bartik is not framework as well because it's marked as internal, but it's definitely built as a framework still.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody.
I like how we're venturing into the how of things, as if we've already passed the why and for whom. I'm not sure if we need to dive in more into the exact how of all things. I'm wondering. I mean, we're now leaning towards the site builder, self-starter, internal evangelist scenario. What is now the next step? Does Laurie and team re-propose this idea? I mean, it needs a more specific write-up, I think, of the idea. But it also sounds like at least this part of product management that is present likes the idea. Do we go towards a plan?
I think we should. I mean, I think it's a great idea personally. I think we just need to be very, I think we should just be clear on the audience and
what it is and what it is not. Yeah.
And I think we're pretty close. Like, I think the summary in the beginning was fairly narrow, right? It's a showcase with default content. It's not a framework. It's not built to be reconfigured. It's not a starting point for developers. It's not a starting point for building a site. It's to learn, to see and learn what Drupal can do. That's kind of what I heard. Yep. And that's very narrow. And I think it could even be a little bit more narrow.
And looking good in the process, yes,
right? Yeah. So I think you guys are very close.
So in that context, Dries, you think that the farmers market is an appropriate content model for the person who's learning about Drupal, experiencing Drupal for the first time, clicking around. The people we've talked about, the internal evangelists, etc.
I think so. I mean, I still think so. I don't have a better proposal than farmers market. So I'm not opposed to farmers market, but I think you'll have the best, let's call it conversion rate, when the person that's installing this thing sees a clear path from the farmers market or whatever to implementing his or her idea, right? If I try this thing and the farmers market is very far away from what I'd like to accomplish, then it will be harder to convince them, I think, versus when we show them something which is, resembles or is much closer to their idea, then I think the mind will be able to basically say, oh, wow, this is not quite what I want, but I can see how I can get there. Having said all that, I'm not opposed to farmers market. But if we have an idea that is closer to a more common use case, then I think that could be more effective. But I don't have a better idea. Having said all that, I don't have a better idea. So but do you know what I mean?
I do. I know what you mean. Yeah. So I had an alternate idea for the content model in the document that I shared over on the side, which involves a music site, which I think is something that lots of people could understand, and it's fairly common, and also touches media and entertainment, which is obviously something that a lot of Drupal sites are. A lot of people are already using Drupal for. I think it's. I like it. I think I like it. I like the farmers market example as well. But I think if we're not going to go with the farmers market example, something that's equally as limited in scope, such as what I put in the document, which is basically a small record producer, like a niche record producer of a particular style of music, maybe jazz albums or something like that, where your model is just artists, albums, songs, etc. Rather than an entire I don't know corporation that has many different types of media that they produce. Like we have.
I think the beauty of the farmers market is that you don't have so big expectations, so you are not turned down by the extent that it could be implemented with core. But if we would try to do an Etsy, like an Amazon.com clone or something, then it would necessarily need to be limited, and the expectation about it would be much higher, because it would sort of look like it's an Amazon or an Etsy or whatever, and you would want to have related products and all kinds of other things, like ratings and whatever, things that core does not have. So I think we need to be careful to choose an example where people don't have too high expectations about what it should do.
That's a
otherwise.
Yeah. So where I'm coming from is, maybe I'll give an example, and I'll make it up on the fly, and it may not be the best example, but say, let's say I'm a parent, and my kids are in soccer, and I'm involved with the soccer club, and I want to build a community website where all of the parents can go to and learn about the schedule, when the next game is, where it is, where maybe they can self-organize a little bit around helping with the soccer, maybe driving kids or doing the laundry, who's going to wash the jerseys, that kind of stuff. And so let's say that's my situation, right? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a solution that allows me to build this. And I have something very specific in mind, what I want, very, very specific, like features, how it should look roughly. And so then when you find Drupal, you install the farmers market. I mean, it could be a very big leap between my community soccer site and a farmers market site, right? And I think for a lot of people, that could be like, whoa, I don't quite see how I can go from this farmers market example to my community soccer site. And that's why I think the example could be very influential.
Yes, the specifics.
I think a long-term goal was to be able to pick from more than one sample profile. Mm-hmm. And Lee Rollins had a lot of ideas around how to make that happen. And this would be a version of an install profile. And there could be others, obviously, with specific looks and specific features. Because if you have a soccer club site, and you want to set up a bookshop, that would be also very different. So
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no one example, right? It will always exclude others. By being specific, we exclude others, or we make a larger gap with other scenarios.
Well,
What I
mean,
like
most
is
went very generic with the example, like Dries had mentioned before, like a corporate website with about us pictures and a
Yes.
gallery and upcoming events. Like that is really easy to conversely see. Oh, okay, I could just make this about soccer. But it's a lot less easy to style nicely, probably.
Right.
But it does seem like the
Yeah.
farmers market example wasn't chosen based on our target audience. It was chosen based on what we thought would give us the least amount of bike shedding because it's what the documentation team already chose.
That's true.
And not just that. The documentation team chose chose something that they thought would be something that they could make a relatively complex content model out of that showed Drupal strengths in terms of creating reusable content and interconnected content.
Yes, for documentation. It's different than the thing that we're talking about here.
Right. But that does serve both purposes, because that's what we want to do. We want to show people, what Drupal is capable of, that it's capable of complex content models, which is why I suggested the one with music, because that also would have, concepts of, referenced entities of a couple of different kinds, but in a way that people, in a format that people understand.
Yeah, but I mean, so would person to department. Like, there's many ways to demonstrate NAD references if that's your goal.
I think one could say the goal, I mean, this is where it could be useful to go back to the goals and trying to articulate the goals, and even forgetting about farmers markets. Because I would say the goal could be to, to convince anyone with an idea that Drupal is a good choice for them. Well, again, I'm making this up on the fly. Because if you phrase it that way, the way you measure success is the amount of people that try it and then say, you know what, I can build my idea with Drupal. Which is different from what you said, Kevin. Like you phrase it as showing how powerful Drupal's content modeling is, which is sort of a more technical view. And I'm not saying it's the wrong goal. It's just a slightly different goal, right? It's less about optimizing the conversion of people downloading and trying Drupal to them, using Drupal.
Well, I guess you make a really good point, Dries. But I guess what my point is more that if Drupal can make a site with this kind of complex, these kind of complex interrelationships of different kinds of content to one another, then it can probably do the thing that I need, right? That's the thing that I'm imagining that the user will think looking at this, right? But they don't have to know that, that they're not going to assume that if there are albums and songs that when they download Drupal that they're all only going to get like albums and songs as content types, that they can't make, other kinds of interrelated entities of content. But also, we need to have something that that will lend itself towards being a really attractive and cool looking site, which is why I went towards the music example in the first place, because I feel that this is also true of the farmers market example, where there's a lot of rich imagery that you can use. It can be very kind of funky and cool and and kind of earthy and like maker movement and like farm to table. It's very kind of, there's a lot of really cool stuff that could go into that. But the music,
it has a personality and a positive vibe. It's not like not like
Yeah, boring.
stock photo workers shaking hands and stuff.
Yeah, remember this is a community initiative, right? Corporate is
Yeah.
not going to make it, I think.
The smiling girl on the phone with a headset. Yep.
Yeah.
So I
It
think we
doesn't have to be that way, though. Just in fairness.
No, there's quirky companies as well.
Exactly.
So
Anyway.
we have roughly 7 minutes left. I think it would be good to define some next steps to take. So I think the first thing that is what we need to do is to update the issue with the latest updates and make the idea even a little bit more compact, so it's easier to talk with people. Is there any other next steps we should define? So I think one thing that we should probably figure out is like, how are we going to communicate about this in the future? So are we going back to the issue, kind of like to the way that we comment something and then the product management comments something over there? Or because I feel like this meeting was very, very good for me to kind of like get the sense on like what are the things that are problems for the product management, like what are you confident about that this is good? And that was kind of what was missing when we were talking on the issue. Like I couldn't really get that kind of feeling at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult to like steer the idea. Like I didn't know how much do I need to steer and all of that. So
yeah. So for me, I'll just say what I think, but again, I'd love to hear what others think too. I would say, update your proposal based on what you've learned. So I think you may or may not want to talk a little bit more about the farmers market. You've heard my input, just input. I would, I would say I'm going to think a little bit more about it, but I'll say there's 99% chance that I'll support whatever you guys come back with in terms of farmers market or something else. Having said that, farmers market may not be my first choice, personally. I think I've made that clear. At the same time, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do that. But if you feel like I triggered some good thoughts or considerations, then yeah, maybe you should talk about it more amongst the team. But yeah, I would say come back with an updated proposal based on some of the feedback in this meeting. Having said that, if you guys say we're going to do farmers market, then I still think this would be a great thing to have for many reasons.
So if you talk about specifically about the creating a new user facing core team, I'd like to keep the idea, not that we propose any specific idea on this initiative. I would like to give that responsibility for the default content initiative, and this will build whatever they have decided based on whatever use case that the default content will come up with. Because that's just the client that we have.
Sure. So I'm definitely in favor of a new user-facing core team that is for now non-default, right?
Yes.
And may become the default team. We can talk about that later. But for now, I'm in favor of that, and I'm making sort of the assumption that at this point in time it would be tied to an install profile that showcases default content.
Yeah.
And I would also be in favor of an install profile that showcases default content. So I like both ideas. I'm just trying to figure out how do we make sure they move the needle the most for Drupal. And I think that's the only thing that's maybe worth discussing in my mind. Everything else looks great to me.
So,
Good. And then we should probably figure out if that's something that we need to figure out in the idea, or do we need to figure that out in the prototype/plan? because before we even start implementing, we have to figure this out, right? And maybe we're overloading the idea a bit if we want to hash it out in the idea phase. But I don't know what other people
Yeah,
think.
presuming that the plan would have to include the data model that you're going to
Exactly.
use, then we could postpone that approval to the plan part. And then just say, yep, the ideas are both signed up on, go forth and make awesome. I'm just a little sensitive about that because we've tried to do that before numerous times and people get the wrong idea about what that means. And so they think that we're then going back on our approval of the idea when we quibble with things in the plan, and that worries me. So if we can have the understanding that the sign off is on the who is this for and what are we doing, and not the how, and that the how sign off needs to come later and probably involve a lot of people not on this call, like framework managers and release managers and stuff, then I'm totally comfortable with that.
That's a good bit for the template for each of those kinds of issues, right? This answers who and how.
Yeah.
This who and why. This answer, and the other one, it's for how.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. I think that's great. And then, you know, we can talk about the models in the you know, between, I guess it's really Keith, Roy, myself, and Gabor who've been participating in the you know, in the example content. Maybe we can hopefully get Lee back involved, and we can put forward to as part of the plan phase, put forward to or more proposals of the model, and then we can, you know, just get it on.
No, I think the key thing that was defined on this call, or at least I haven't seen it articulated this way in the issue queue, is that this is for the technical evangelist at a organization or you know, the person who likes to tinker and has to build a soccer club website or whatever, but it's for the person who's downloading Drupal and evaluating it that way. It's not the person who's being guided by a sales team somewhere else. It's not the person who you know, is non-technical and trying to figure out what Drupal is. It's for a relatively technical person who's trying to envision how to put what they want to do in their mind, and making Drupal look good for that. So I think in that light, it is worth the, you know, group of you to get back together and discuss that, if that changes your proposal for default content or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's for an evangelist, though. I feel like that's different. I feel,
Okay.
I don't know, maybe it's not. I feel like it is for somebody downloading Drupal, somebody that wants to learn about Drupal, wants to see what Drupal can do, and wants to get convinced ultimately that Drupal is the right tool to implement his or her idea/dream.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, the evangelist bit came from maybe she is not the one to decide that the project will be built, and she
Yeah,
will
that's what I
feel
meant.
confident that she can show this to her boss.
Yeah,
I see.
oftentimes when we talk about evangelists, we think of somebody who's a committed Drupal person within an organization.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't muddy the waters. I agree with everything Dre said.
Yeah, it could be
More
just
of a
somebody
newbie
who's,
role.
So yeah, and then Dries, are you here next Thursday or are you off?
I believe I'm off. I'm flying.
And you're off for Thursday after that probably too, because that's your vacation.
Yeah. Let's
So I
see.
think the next opportunity we'd all have to talk in person would be the 5th, possibly.
Mhm.
In that actually.
But again, I think I'm comfortable with whatever you guys come up with.
Yeah.
Like I didn't hear anything that's like crazy or that gives me anxiety or something.
Right,
think
we have to be aware not to hash everything out in calls because we're discussing ideas, right? We still have issue queues.
I liked, and again, I liked everything what you guys proposed. Just get a little bit more specific on who this is for and what success looks like for that persona. And then ask yourself whether the farmer's market idea is still the best one. And maybe it is. And if so, I'll get in line with that. You know,
But maybe it didn't.
Or maybe it isn't, and then you come back with another idea.
Yeah.
And that's great too.
Yes.
And then review this 2 weeks from now, then. And then
Yeah,
an option.
3
3 weeks.
3 weeks from now.
or not, like review it in the issue queue in the meantime, and then
Right,
if
yeah.
another sign off is required, then yeah, we can revisit
Yes.
it.
That would be better, yeah.
I think
Yay, everyone.
All right.
Is there anything else you need from me, or is this achieving what you wanted to achieve?
Yep.
Laurie,
For me,
Roy, and
do-
Keith.
Do we know who exactly needs to sign off on these things?
For the idea itself, I believe it's just me and Dries and someone from UX, so Roy. For the plan, that's everybody. That's framework manager.
Do we consider this, well, the theme is probably a feature, but do we want a wrap around, do we give this the initiative tag somewhere together with the experimental content maybe? Just making sure that we're communicating the effort / ambition / impact.
Yeah, Dries, do you think this is enough to be considered an initiative?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think so. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a substantial amount of work.
Mhm.
Well, if it's just a theme,
Theme is a
I'm not
feature.
sure that's an initiative. I think that seems like, again, not trying to say it's not a lot of work to create a theme, but I'm not sure that it needs sort of an initiative. But if it's the combined thing, the
Mhm.
theme, the default content, and maybe some of the learning materials, if you guys decide that that is part of it, like the tour module stuff that I mentioned, then that's definitely an initiative in my mind.
I think it would be useful to wrap these things in a way together, even though the ideas are separate.
Yeah.
I agree.
I also agree with that because I got a little worried when you were like, we're just the client, whatever default content comes up with, because the closer you work together, the better this result is going to be.
Actually, I've been participating.
I know, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like
So-
in general, I think that these two efforts will be stronger if they're combined rather than separate.
Yes, definitely, I agree.
So-
And that's how we worked already. So it's more clearly it's just communicating the way we work.
So can we call it the out of the box?
Oh, not now.
At 1:06 p.m. No.
Anyway,
Sorry.
I guess so. There was
Sorry.
two things. One was I guess a fresher proposal that's got the, updated purpose and this kind of thing. Probably get Dries to have a comment in the issue that says, "Yep, this looks good to me." And then I heard also we need a plan for the how on the theme and example content and get that going to the next level of approval.
Yes.
Lots of next steps.
Yeah, shoot me an email if you don't mind, or a text message or something,
Yep.
when this updated issue is available. Then I'll try to read it as soon as I can.
cool.
Thanks for your time.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks for your time.
Thank you guys. Thanks for I know the process wasn't or was a little frustrating, or a lot of frustrations there. I don't know, but thanks for keep pushing for this. I think it's great.
I'm sure it's a breeze from now on.
It definitely helps
Thanks,
getting
Al.
people in front of people and talking in real time. So yeah.
Yes,
And
it
thanks
does.
to Larry for recording. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, folks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.